Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are back once again to continue our WrestleMania project, this time featuring WrestleMania 7, which took place on March 24th, 1991, at the Los Angeles Memorial Sports Arena in Los Angeles, California, of course. This was the second time WrestleMania took place at this venue. If you'll recall, this was the final portion of WrestleMania 2. And the announced attendance for this WrestleMania was 16,158. The tagline for this WrestleMania was Superstars and Stripes Forever, a very topical tagline there, which we will hit on a little bit more, just very briefly. But it is obviously the elephant in the room. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and kick off each match. We will go through and rate them per usual and then rate the show overall. The first match of the evening features the Rockers going up against Haku and the Barbarian with Bobby the Brain Heenan. KP, in terms of opening matches, I felt like this was one of the better ones that we've seen through WrestleMania 7. Would you agree? And what were your thoughts on this one?
100% agree. This was a really fun way to kick off WrestleMania 7. I think the tag team of the Rockers and Haku and the Barbarian, they put on a really compelling contest, and it was very high-paced, very energetic, very back and forth for the entirety, and had some really nice tag team offense, basically from start to finish. So, yeah, I think basically anything you could really ask for in a tag match was given here. They were even given, plenty of time. It felt like they had probably a good, 10 or so minutes, maybe a little bit more, I don't know. But I didn't feel myself sort of like wanting it to like end anytime soon, and I didn't think it like dragged or anything either. So I think in terms of lengthwise, it's probably a perfect time. And yeah, it was just a really good watch. It was nice and easy. It was good. It was intriguing. It was it was gripping. And yeah, just the the scale was just tipping back and forth all the time. Was a really good flowing match. It gets to a point in the end where Shawn Michaels takes out the Barbarian. He drops him to ringside. That allows Marty to hit a missile dropkick onto Haku. And then that allows Shawn Michaels to then go for a crossbody in order to get the victory. So you can probably just imagine there from that little description, very fast-paced offense, bit of this, bit of that, bit of this, tag team chemistry coming out. And that was the case for both teams. It was obviously a little bit more from the Rockers being the faces in this one. But yeah, I think just generally speaking, it was just a really clinical tag match. I had a great time. A really good start to the WrestleMania show. And yeah, kicking it off in a really good way. So I gave it a 7 out of 10. I think, yeah, as far as the opening matches go, this is probably the best one we've had, or it's at least up there as like one of the top two. So yeah, pretty good. How'd you rate this one then, Nick?
You're basically on the same page there. This is the definition of a hot tag, with Jannetty taking loads of the offense from Haku and the Barbarian. And then Shawn had an pretty easy match comparatively speaking. Super over, obviously, the Rockers, but then Shawn coming in to kind of finish it. And this was, in my opinion, the best opening match of WrestleMania so far. So we're talking 1 through 7. This one was the best one, in my opinion, as well. So, yeah, Rockers seem to be like they should have some gold around their waist, at least in my opinion. But unfortunately, this would mark the final WrestleMania match for Marty Jannetty, and a theme we see very much throughout the night. This was a final. Lots of finals for WrestleMania, so a kind of turning of the tide, if you will. I also give this one a 7 out of 10. The next match has the Texas Tornado going up against Dino Bravo with Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart playing possibly his biggest role ever in this WrestleMania. This was the only match that person he was managing didn't win, and he didn't kind of help them win. So interesting bit there. Maybe Jimmy Hart finally found the winning formula on this one. But yeah, KP, what'd you think of this one?
Definitely a drop in quality between this match and the previous one. Texas Tornado and Dino Bravo. I'm not actually familiar of Texas Tornado up until this matchup. So this is a brand new sort of like a person for me to see how good they are. I didn't really get too much from it though, unfortunately, because it was a very short match. So you can't really do much with short allocation, basically. I guess to a point where Texas Tornado has like a claw locked in on the face of Dino, and then he hits what he calls the spinning tornado, which is basically a 360 sort of like right hand. It looks like he gets some serious sort of like torque on that, to be fair. And it looked pretty impressive. It was, quite clinical. And that would be enough to get the victory in this contest. But I think up until that point, Dino had a fair bit of the offense. They'd gone around the outside, and then back in. There isn't a lot to pick out from this one because it was so short. So I think that's the main probably takeaway from here. But whilst we saw it, it was okay. It was fine. Didn't really do too much. But I gave it a 3.5 out of 10. Like I say, if I could say more, I probably would do. But there just really isn't much to really scope on here, unfortunately. What did you make of this very short match then, Nick?
Yeah, basically the same here. Obviously, we've all heard of the Von Erichs. We've heard a ton of stories on them and their family between Ric Flair, and they actually just recently released a movie not that long ago. So familiar with the family and the story, but had never seen them in WWE. So this was my first exposure to the Von Erichs in WWE. And clearly, beating someone like Dino Bravo, who has a relatively consistent rate at WrestleMania, I think clearly this match was just built to meant to build up the Texas Tornado Eric Von Erich here. So but this was a decent enough, but like a lot of the matches in the previous Manias, just needed some more time. So I gave this one a 4 out of 10. Moving on to the next match, we have the British Bulldog going up against Warlord with Slick. Somehow the Bulldog here, or the British Bulldog is booked as an underdog and the small guy in this match, which is just a crazy concept in itself. This is very much the dynamic, though. KP, what do you think of British Bulldog here in this match up against a debuting at Mania, anyways, Warlord?
Not bad at all. Yeah, I thought this was a decent contest. I think it went back to sort of like some of the quality we saw in the first one, and just sort of like general entertainment wise. Bulldog looked impressive, as did Warlord. I mean, Warlord is he is a big guy, as is Bulldog. But if you're making someone like Bulldog look a little small, obviously you got somebody in there that's a pretty large in stature. But yeah, very impressive physiques from both these men. And the wrestling was pretty fun as well. It was a good contest. It gets to a point in the end where Bulldog, he's in a full Nelson applied by Warlord, and he managed to get out of it in the end after probably a good couple of minutes or so. He's in it for a little while. Once he does get out of it, he manages to lift Warlord up, goes for a running power slam, and that would be enough to secure the victory in the end. It started off a little bit slow, and it was progressive, but it did get pretty good as it went on. I think once you sort of like get through the halfway point of this matchup, then you really start to sink your teeth into it, and it does really sort of like get you gripped. I think it did for me anyway, personally. But yeah, just get past that first like few minutes, and it wasn't too bad after that. To be fair, I gave it a 6 out of 10. Like I say, it was a much improved match compared to what we just saw prior to this one. And I thought it was decent, to be fair. What did you make of this one?
So this is your classic, David versus Goliath, even though both of them are pretty much built like a Goliath. British Bulldog's a bit smaller, but not much. Certainly not as much as the kind of angle they're playing up here. I think WWE in their head kind of wanted this to have that dynamic of the Andre Hogan main event. This was kind of what they envisioned, and this was just that same kind of story, just much better executed in the ring. So British Bulldog getting the win here over Warlord, and a good dynamic and both pretty good looking athletes in the ring. And this basically British Bulldog is getting beat down most of the match, and then makes that triumphant comeback to get the slam and the win. Interesting fact about this one: these two would go at it at every single pay-per-view this year. So 5 times this match was seen throughout the year at basically every pay-per-view. I think they only put on 5 pay-per-views that year. So this was very much a hot rivalry. Moving on to the next match, we have the Nasty Boys with Jimmy Hart once again, going up against the Hart Foundation for those World Tag Team Championships. This one got some time. KP, tag matches have been pretty much the best style of, or the best genre of match throughout the first 7 WrestleManias. How does this one live up to that expectation for you?
Yeah, I think this one went down a similar route. We do hold a lot of prestige for these tag team matches, and obviously we saw one at the start of the show, which was pretty good. This one was also pretty good, to be fair. Nasty Boys making their WrestleMania debut as a team, taking on the Hart Foundation. Yeah, I enjoyed this one, to be fair. It was a really, really nice back and forth contest. I think like a lot of them, can be, to be fair, and they do it really well. Like I say, there's a mold, and you can clearly see that for the majority of the time, they do sort of like go alongside that. Heart Foundation, they get to a point where they hit a heart attack, but the referee doesn't count because instead he's dealing with Bret Hart, trying to get him out the ring instead. As to why he's so focused on removing Bret, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe they're a bit more stern on the time for the countouts back then, because obviously you can only be in the ring for 5 seconds if you're not legal. So yeah, I think he's distracted, tries to get Bret out the ring. As he's doing that, Jimmy Hart, who's on the outside, passes his megaphone to Sags, who then hits Jim over the head. And Knobs goes in for a cover, but like he does so just literally just by resting his hand and arm just on top of Bret Hart, just on top of Jim Neidhart. So it's literally just like a last ditch sort of go for the cover, see if you win type thing. And they did in fact win the titles from that just attempted cover. So yeah, I mean, the Hart Foundation losing their gold, and in a pretty fun match. Like, there was a lot between both teams, but Hearts looked great as they always do. Tag team efficiency just on show. And when it comes to the Nasty Boys, I quite liked what I saw from them as well. They were aggressive, they were doing their thing. Jimmy Hart on the outside as well, just playing his part, like you said earlier. Very successful WrestleMania for him, and this was one of those matches. So yeah, it just worked, faces against heels, and just a clinical tag team match as well. I gave it a 7 out of 10, like I did with the first match of the night. The tag team contest, they like we say, they seem to just know how to do for the most part.
Yeah, and like I said, this one got some time, and it felt, like it was very entertaining back and forth. Actually, there were several moments throughout the night that had my jaw on the floor. This was one of them. I thought, no chance in hell do the Hart Foundation lose to this. Props to the Nasty Boys in their pre-match promo, because they were putting over this gimmick like hell. But it was cheesy. I think we can all admit to that. But for the Hart Foundation to not get the win here was pretty shocking to me. Jimmy Hart starting his kind of a menace of a tour here throughout the night. This is the first of several matches where his megaphone comes into play in the outcome here, and the Nasty Boys end up winning the title. But yeah, I thought this was a pretty good match. Also gave this one a 7 out of 10. And the Nasty Boys kind of essentially ending the Hart Foundation's tag reign. This would be Jim the Neidhart's last WrestleMania appearance. Bret would obviously go on to start his singles career after this, and Jim would just have lots of basically lack of cooperation, I think, is probably the best term going forward. And as for the Nasty Boys, they very much lived up to their gimmick this evening. They went out and partied with Willie Nelson, who sang the national anthem for WrestleMania, and then came in to work next day with one less belt. Asked them, what happened to your other belt? And they said they gave it to Willie Nelson as a souvenir. So lots of talking points on that one. Speaking of talking points, let's move on to the next match, which has one of our favorites, Jake the Snake Roberts, going up against the newly transformed, we saw him last year, the model Rick Martel, in a topical match. This one is a blindfold match. Funny enough, we just saw one of these on current NXT not that long ago, and I'm sure we discussed it extensively there about this match type. But KP, can you give us anything positive about this one?
Well, it was entertaining, I suppose, in parts. It was funny. It has amusing bits in it. There's only so much you can do in a blindfold match, right? Or when you can't see your opponent, what can you really have the guys do? They're not going to be able to put on a technical masterpiece, are they? So I guess you have to take this one with just for what it is, and that is just a little bit of a gimmick match, right? And that's essentially what it was. For the most part of it, you got Jake the Snake Roberts. He's pointing his finger. Like he starts off in like one direction. He sort of like moves it along, and then the crowd, when he gets to pointing right at Rick Martel, then it gets to a point where the crowd start to really cheer, and like he's like, okay, he's there, is he? and then they slowly do the walkover, and whatever happens after that happens. And that happens for probably about a good 80% of the matchup. There's literally just them like pointing. Boy, it's mostly Jake because they don't care about Rick Martel. They're not helping him. So yeah, they're helping Jake for a good 80% of the match. They're trying to find where Rick is. There even gets to a point at ringside where Rick grabs a steel chair, and he thinks that Jake the Snake is the ring post as he sort of like backs into it, turns around, just whacks the ring post with the chair, hurts his hand. A bad decision from him on that part. He gets back into the ring, and then a couple of minutes later, after they found each other again, Jake the Snake quickly transfers into sort of like looking for his opponent into a DDT, so his classic finish, and that would be enough to get the victory. But yeah, it was it's a gimmick match. Like, what? I don't know what more I can really say about it. It's kind of amusing because two men can't see each other. They're desperately trying to find each other, and they're they're making a comical situation out of this. But yeah, it wasn't like a technical masterpiece or anything, and it can't be, can it? I just gave it a 4 because it was entertaining. At least, like I was laughing at it. I found it amusing and funny, but it's not a good match. I think that's fair to say. How did you make this? Like, are you like a fan of these sort of like more maybe like light-hearted, gimmicky, fun matches, or do you not really think there's a place for this?
I know that rhetorical question is for the podcast and not for yourself in particular, but no, yeah, this is one of those match types that A, I'm never going to get behind, and B, once you've seen one, you've seen them all. Obviously, this is the first one, at least from a Mania perspective, so it is new to them at the time, I suppose, or maybe even not. Regardless, the whole pointing and getting the crowd reaction. If Martel had a brain cell, he would just know if you hear the audience yelling, you should move. Connect those dots at least after the first, if not second time that he kind of does that. But yeah, it does make you laugh. But it's like a 6-minute match feels like a 20-minute match because it's like, what else are you gonna do? What else can you possibly do here? Both men deserve better, but yeah, I gave this one a 4.5 out of 10. Probably just biased because I like both the guys in the ring. So whatever that's worth. Let's quickly move on to the next match, which has the debut of the Undertaker going up, or with Paul Bearer going up against Superfly Jimmy Snuka. This was definitely one of the debuts that I was very much looking forward to. I think it goes without saying the ending of this match was very much going to be known by most people in wrestling, especially us. One of the most, if not the most, notable career records at WrestleMania. KP, what'd you make of Undertaker's debut here?
Yeah, we are aware of the Undertaker's record at WrestleMania, so this didn't come as any surprise for me personally. I hadn't watched this match before. I knew that this was the first match in the longevity of his WrestleMania streak. But yeah, this is the first time me watching it, and I didn't really miss too much. I'm not gonna lie. It was fine. It was okay. It was a short match, so again, can't really say too much about it. But yeah, Jimmy Superfly Snuka, he did little bits here and there, but it was mostly Undertaker for the matchup. Undertaker ends it with his classic Tombstone Power Driver to get the victory. Starts off his WrestleMania streak, Paul Bearer on the outside, being his just just charismatic as possible with that urn. There isn't really much I can say about this one, except for it was a pretty dominant display from Undertaker. He controlled a large part of the matchup. And yeah, it didn't really give Snuka, too much to sort of like to sort of play with here and to get onto to his good side. So yeah, I mean, just a win for Undertaker. 4 out of 10 I gave it. I can't really do much more than that. It was just a quick, few minute match and just made the Undertaker look strong, I guess. So that was the main thing to take from this.
Yeah, you mentioned Paul Bearer. I think without Paul Bearer, I do wonder if this gimmick ever would have worked. And some of the kids' reaction they were showing in the crowd, you could tell WWE was very much like putting a lot of eggs in this basket. And luckily, so it did end up working, obviously. Jimmy Snuka is told by the commentary team as being this very prominent, respected figure in the business, and making the Undertaker's victory over him in this fashion so noteworthy. But again, like I've said in previous WrestleManias, there must be a lot more with Snuka going on outside of Mania, because from a Mania standpoint, I haven't seen hardly anything of him. So just it's a very interesting story with him. So I'm curious. I think it's something I'm going to have to dig into outside of WrestleMania because, I'm not sure where that prominence is coming from. It's certainly not WrestleMania's. So regardless, Undertaker is starting his streak here. I give it a 5 out of 10. Maybe that's a bit of nostalgia, but I think it is known a lot of Undertakers, especially earlier matches, are not the best. Nothing wrong with him. Just the matches itself. He's obviously being booked very strong, and so the wins are coming at a rather fast and quick pace. With that, let's move on to the next match, which has the Ultimate Warrior going up against Randy, the Macho Man Savage, with Queen Sherri. May even Miss Elizabeth is at ringside for this one. This is a career versus career or retirement match, if you will. Obviously, we've seen these in the past. Does retirement, is that ever a real thing in wrestling? We can make notes of that later, obviously. But for me, this was by far the best match of the night so far. KP, we share the same opinion on this one.
Yeah, we do. Of course we do. This is by far match of the evening. Let's just put it out there, right? Yeah, absolutely fantastic contest. I think when it comes down to what this match meant for both men, they showed that in the ring. You could see just the animosity between both men after the build and the feud, going into this one. It just basically had most things you need in a big match in wrestling. So ultimately, once you can just get into all of that, you're gonna have a great time watching it. Like I said, animosity between both men, very back and forth. Moments of I guess it being close to being over for both competitors. It gets to a point where Macho Man, he heads up to the top rope. He has Ultimate Warrior down on his back, and he hits not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 Macho Man elbow drops from the top rope. And you'd hit them all back to back. Ultimate Warrior would still kick out. Now, I personally think that, if you have somebody who hits 5 of his, finishing move in a row and someone kicks out at that, I'm not entirely sure that's the best decision. That's my only critique from this entire match. Like, that is, I'll start with the bad bit, because it just makes Macho Man's elbow look completely worthless. And we've seen it be really good in, prior WrestleManias and stuff, one elbow drop and that's done. Ultimately, Ultimate Warrior is different and it does take a bit more to pin him, but 5 finishes and you're still kicking out, I think that's maybe a little bit extreme. If it was like 2 or 3, then yeah, okay, you might be able to salvage that, but 5 is extraordinary. Like, imagine doing that now, in like modern day wrestling. Someone like, for example, like Cody Rhodes hits 5 crossroads on somebody and then they would still kick out. You would be like, well, what's the point? So I think that should be the same case here, even if it is, a high stakes match such as this. But anyway, negative out the way. The kick out from Ultimate Warrior would happen. My jaw was on the floor at that point. Warrior, he kicks out and then he basically just sort of like he spurs himself on, uses the ropes, shake himself back into the swing of things. He goes for his splash. He only hits it once and Savage kicks out. So again, fair enough on that one. That's fine. Big moment still though. And Macho Man, it gets to a point where he goes up to the top rope. He's got Warrior at ringside, and he looks to hit an axe handle, diving down towards him, and he just collides with the barricade. So obviously, getting his midsection in there. Not obviously ideal when you got someone like Ultimate Warrior as your opponent here. And it gets to a point in a moment where he basically just Ultimate Warrior gets Savage back into the ring, and he hits 3 shoulder tackles. The first 2 convincingly send him out of the ring on each occasion. The third one sort of like makes him stumble in the ring and like just really slowly just like rolls off the apron sort of thing. Warrior drags him back in and then puts his foot on top of Macho Man to get the victory, and literally just like he just literally just places one foot on top of him, points up to the top, and that's it. That's the career of Macho Man Randy Savage effectively over as far as we know at this point. So Sensational Sherri, she's at ringside for this entire contest, and from what I gathered from the commentator, apparently her career was also at risk from this one. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one in a minute, Nick. But it seemed to be that she was also, losing her career from this situation. And she gets in the ring, and she's extremely upset, very annoyed, very angry with Macho Man for losing. And she starts taking out her frustrations on him, and kicks away, and just basically adding insult to injury here. And Miss Elizabeth, who's been sat sort of like kind of near the ramp area sort of thing for this matchup, she's seen enough. She doesn't want this to happen, and she gets out of her seat, runs right down into the ring, clears Sensational Sherri out by throwing her out the ring. And she tries to console Macho Man. He thinks it's still Sherri, trying to inflict more punishment. Eventually, he turns around, sees that it's Elizabeth. He thinks that she's the one that attacked him. And then the referee, who's dealing with Sherri on the outside, trying to stop her from getting back into the ring, tells Macho Man that, actually, no, it was Sensational Sherri that was hitting you, not her. And then the referee does effectively remove her from the conversation and gets her out of the way. And then it's a really nice moment. It's a really touching moment between Macho Man and Elizabeth. You can tell, obviously, it's very emotional. Elizabeth is basically in tears in the ring, and Macho Man, he's doing his lap of honor sort of thing, but he's embracing Elizabeth once again, which was an absolutely massive moment during this time of wrestling. And there are people in the crowd literally bawling their eyes out. They're sobbing, they're crying, and it's just obviously very, very emotional. But yeah, what a moment to reunite for those two, and very, very great matchup that just led to a very emotional ending, and it just meant a lot. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. I thought it was just exceptional, and just had a great time watching it, and just I didn't know too much about the build. I knew little bits going into it, and obviously the history between Elizabeth and Savage, and just everything just put into one. It just made for a great bit of television. So yeah, I loved it. What did you make of this one, Nick? I had a lot to say. Do you?
Yeah, I think you hit kind of most of the points, but in terms of this match, yes, the 5 elbow drops. I think, my jaw was on the floor. Literally, the exact notes I had. The exact same thing you just said as well. But that was my genuine reaction, because even in today's, as you kind of mentioned, finishers are very much not what they were at this time. I think that's fair to say. But for someone to hit 5 finishers, even in a match today, consecutively like that, it's not uncommon for someone to hit 5 finishers in a big match today. They've calmed that down a little bit, but there are certain people, and you know exactly who I'm referring to, that will dish out and or take as many, but over a course of a match, not directly one after another. And as you mentioned, yes, this definitely makes Savage look weak, but also makes Warrior looked very, very strong. So they were putting all their eggs in a basket. That didn't end up working out, as we probably most of us fans know at this point. But for this match, just in the moment, was drama. It was classic. It was wrestling 101. Like this was a complete match. There was a complete story. We see full circle. We see the iconic moment with Miss Elizabeth and Randy after the match. Sensational Sherri does a terrific job of her role as well here. I don't think it's her retirement. I think they were referring to more so like Randy was her meal ticket, so to speak, because I do believe she has more appearances after this. So I don't think it was her official retirement. I think it was more so like metaphorically they were selling the fact that, now that you don't have Savage, you're screwed kind of thing. I'm not 100% on that, but I'm quite certain that is the case. But regardless, for the match itself, just incredible, like back and forth. Both these guys selling. This was by far, at least from what I've seen historically and through these WrestleMania watches, this was by far Ultimate Warrior's best match. Randy Savage obviously being the common denominator here. Could he pull it out of Ultimate Warrior? I think yes, he does here. Yeah, this was just incredible. I actually gave this one with the absolute tear-jerking moment, similar to the opposite end of the Undertaker, showing the crowd just absolutely shocked and couldn't believe this was happening. They have a lot of time invested in this. This goes through, Savage is a pretty prominent figure throughout the first 7 WrestleManias, and to see this kind of go full circle, him get his happy moment finally again with Miss Elizabeth, just an incredible moment, incredible storytelling. And I gave this one my second of the WrestleMania series. I gave this one a 10 out of 10. Just in terms of in-ring story and the story overall being told. this hit me hard. So I gave this one a 10 out of 10. Funny enough, both of my perfect matches given through WrestleMania 7 are both have a common denominator in that of Randy Savage. So make of that what you will. But yeah, this was definitely the match of the night. I wasn't gonna give that away yet, but now that you have, I will as well. Yeah, this is truly one of the best matches of the first 7 WrestleManias, and it's not close. With that, we'll move on back to reality now. We get Genichiro Tenryu going up against Kojo Kitao. Might have butchered those names, but I did my best. Going up against Demolition, we see them once again with Mr. Fuji. Some good-looking competitors for Demolition here. But what did you make of this one, KP? Definitely back to reality, but now we have a tag team, so it should be somewhat decent, right?
Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you? We hype up the tag team matches, and we do love them. They tend to work them really, really well. Yeah, no, not this one. It was a very weird match. So first of all, it was mostly dominated by Demolition, as they do during their matches. It had a very, very slow pace to it. And when I say slow pace, I mean, like, if they were going any slower, they would have been wrestling backwards. And that's quite interesting. It was just dull, like extremely, extremely dull. There was nothing to it. It was just a very slow, progressive to really very little end. Just very casual display of a tag team wrestling match. It's a weird one. It really is. I've never seen 4 guys just go about their business so casually before. It was quite bizarre. It gets to a point where Demolition, they're going for their elbow drop backbreaker. Tenryu is able to stop it from happening, and he ends up getting a power bomb to secure the victory. So it's just like it's a weird one. It came as a shock as well. So at the time this match, Demolition were by far the more known team here. Tenryu and Kitao, they're from Japan, and apparently WWF had a Japan tour coming up after this one. I did a little because I did a little bit of research because I wanted to know who these guys were and why they beat Demolition. And I was even interested, how this went down the way it did. And yeah, they apparently had a Japan tour coming up. They wanted to give them a high profile win over a team that apparently was on their way out of the company at the time. I didn't know that about Demolition at this point. So yeah, it was all very new to me, just like, hitting up this one and just like seeing what actually it was all about. I know you normally go through all the ins and outs, Nick, but I was genuinely interested to see what on earth was what this one meant and why it took place like this. So yeah, it was just bizarre to me, and I had to really dig a little deeper into it. But yeah, I gave it a 3 out of 10. Like I said, just so odd. It just had a really rough pace to it.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit my main points there. I thought they were a decent looking team, but yeah, we hadn't seen them yet. Demolition obviously had been very prominent to this point. But yeah, in terms of the tag matches, not quite living up to our WrestleMania expectations that we've built over the first 7, and another shocking win in the tag division. I think that's fair to say. It's kind of the theme. WWE can give us their theme, but we're going to make our own theme, and that theme is that this whole WrestleMania very much has a turning of the tide, turning page of WrestleMania, and who's going where and who's doing what. Because as you mentioned, this was Demolition's last tag match together on WrestleMania. It kind of appeared, because the gimmick is kind of similar. Is that this team is being replaced by Legion of Doom, which we see later in the night. But yeah, this one just, yes, very slow burn. But as you mentioned, that partnership with WWE, very much like the TNA stuff we see today, that was going on at the time. I forget the exact company name, but it was a Japan wrestling company. So yeah, I gave this one a 4.5 out of 10. Yeah, just not quite enough to chew on there. With that, we'll move on to the next match, and this one has Big Boss Man going up against Mr. Perfect with Bobby the Brain Heenan. Of course, defending that Intercontinental title is Mr. Perfect here. KP, what'd you make of this one? This one was a bit all over the place for me.
Yeah, I think all over the place is pretty fair. I'm gonna say this didn't feel much like an Intercontinental Championship match, to be honest with you. I don't really think that it really had that vibe to it, which is odd. But yeah, just Big Boss Man, he's quite impressive for a man of his size. He's pretty agile, pretty quick, pretty fast paced, and is obviously very, very strong. And then you got Mr. Perfect, who's, extremely clinical, technically sound, just a great in-ring performer, really. You'd think this match would be quite fun, but it didn't really live up to the hype that, when I first saw it on paper, I was like, you know what, this could be good. It was far from that, really. It was just okay. It was bizarre, to say the least, as well, at points. You get Andre the Giant, who just walks down to the ring as if he's just strolling through a park on a Sunday afternoon. And he just goes and grabs the Intercontinental Championship. At this point, I've got no idea what on earth is going on. And eventually he just walks around with it for a good few minutes. He hits Mr. Perfect with it as Mr. Perfect's going to check on the situation. So yeah, whacks him right in the face with it. At this point, Bossman's already down. Mr. Perfect goes down now because obviously the hit to the face by the IC title. And the referee starts like a count to get them both back up to their feet, which Bossman does get back to his feet for, to be fair. And then when Bossman goes on the offense, we get the Barbarian and Haku storm down to the ring and attack Bossman, causing a DQ. So, yeah, this was very odd. Like the last match, it just had a weird feel to it, and I don't really know what else really to say about it. Bossman eventually turns things around after the DQ and sends both men to ringside. Andre hits a couple of chops, hit on both of them, hitting them down, and then Bossman gets announced the winner by disqualification, and it seems to be pretty happy about that. So obviously he doesn't win the IC title. You can't change hands over a disqualification. So yeah, nothing happens there. But I don't know. It just felt very lackluster, very anticlimactic. I gave it a 4 out of 10. There wasn't really much to say about it. I think I probably covered most of it. So yeah, interesting to see what you made of this one.
Yeah, similar to you. I think on paper, this one looked to be a match that would be good. Big Boss Man, the fact that he's able to get this gimmick over is a testament, I think, to himself. But this is probably one of those stories, if we had watched the build to this, we probably would have made a bit more sense. Obviously, the other weasels, if you will, of Bobby the Brain Heenan coming into play with the Barbarian and Haku. Making a mess of things, and Andre comes down, and as you mentioned, actually, you would think he's like at the mall or something. Very, very, very casual walk, but that probably was about as quick as he could move at the time. Yeah, and like you said, Big Bossman is pretty impressive for his size here. Moves around and very over with the crowd as well. What grabbed my attention, obviously, this match is just a bit overbooked. I gave it a 6 out of 10 somehow. It felt like it was entertaining. I don't know if it's like a bad like car crash entertaining or what, but it was entertaining, I guess. So I did give it a 6 out of 10. But what really caught my attention was Mr. Perfect's kind of overselling here. Reminded me of the infamous Shawn Michaels match with Hogan. And I wasn't quite like I actually like similar to the last match. I had to look into that because I was like, why? What's going on here? Something's off about this match. And I think with the overbooking, I think that's probably kind of why they did this. First of all, this is Andre's last WrestleMania appearance. Obviously, he would pass away in '93. So clearly, you could even tell here, just a lot of pain. Felt like even from the beginning of the first WrestleMania match we saw him in, you could just tell he was in a lot of pain. Man lived a long, or not a long, a very hard life, and this was his last WrestleMania appearance. So another last here, turning the page there. But Mr. Perfect is seriously injured here. Has tons of back injuries going on at this time. He has a broken tailbone, and I believe 2 or 3. I can't recall which, but regardless, at that point, it's bad. 2 or 3 bulging discs. So the overselling was to compensate for that pain. He felt that the overselling was less painful on his back than being more stiff, which I guess you could kind of make that connection there. But I think that does kind of, and maybe that's why my rating is what it is. I think the fact that he was able to do what he was able to do here with those injuries, I think kind of made it like, okay, that's pretty impressive. Big Boss Man essentially had to really try to carry this match, and you wouldn't tell. Like if it wasn't for the overselling, I wouldn't be able to tell that this man was in a ton of pain. So I think with that, that's my rating, 6 out of 10. But this one was a bit of a mess for sure. Going on to the next match, we have the Earthquake returning here to going up against another really consistent guy in WrestleMania so far is Greg the Hammer Valentine. KP, what'd you make of this one? This one felt like very much a copy paste of the Earthquake last appearance. But what else have you got to add on this one?
Oh, you're transitioning Psy from match to match. Then essentially captivates my mood entirely. Um, this is Earthquake. This is what he does, right? That's what his matches are. And unfortunately, there's no real saving grace to it. The match itself, it doesn't last too long. Greg, he's looking to lock in a figure four. Jimmy Hart gets up onto the apron to distract him. Earthquake pulls him onto the canvas and hits an elbow drop, and then that allows him to hit the Earthquake Splash to get the win. That's near enough everything that happened. There might be a couple of other little things that I didn't, note down, but yeah, that's essentially the play of the matchup. Just a bit, I guess, after the opening few little bits here and there. But yeah, it was a very quick thing, and it was I guess just a way to keep Earthquake being built up. I don't know if that was really the case going on here at the moment, but that's what I'm getting from these. Greg is quite consistent at WrestleMania, but I'm guessing he's sort of like towards the end of his time now because he doesn't seem to be really getting these opportunities like he did previously. So, yeah, I gave it 2.5 out of 10. I don't really know what else I can really say about it. It was just just a way, I guess, to make Earthquake look strong as they did the previous year. So, yeah, 2.5. I'm afraid nothing crazy in this one.
Yeah, and I'll try to make my size a little more controlled there. But we hit the high of Savage and Ultimate Warrior, and then it's very much downhill for the majority of the show. So yeah, we'll get to these a lot quicker than we have the previous ones. But yeah, this is, like I said, basically a copy paste, kind of what Earthquake did last year. Um, the Jimmy Hart coming into play. Um, once again, allowing the distraction for Earthquake because up to that point, Greg very much felt like he had control of the match. That one distraction allows Earthquake to do what he does. And yeah, 4.5 out of 10. I thought the match was decent enough, but just quick. And Jimmy Hart once again paying dividends and be absolute menace in this WrestleMania. So with that, we'll quickly move on to the next match and where we see the replacement to Demolition. I think is essentially what's going on here. The Legion of Doom going up against Power and Glory. Yeah, what'd you make of this one? Blink and you miss it very much, but can you put anything positive on this one, KP?
It made Legion of Doom look strong. Does that count? I think that's my main positive from this one, I guess. Everything else, yeah, like you said, blink and you'll miss it. There wasn't really much to it, right? Fast match, essentially completely one-sided. Legion of Doom just, showing what they're here for, to dominate and just destroy. And yeah, they hit a Doomsday device, which I think, as most people know, in wrestling, this is probably one of, if not the deadliest, tag team finishing move of all time. And yeah, it looks unreal. When you see it taking place, like, you feel for the guy that's actually being the one to take said move. It's a nasty one, but yeah, like I said, so quick, so one-sided, so dominant. What can you really say about it except for that? Hercules, in a tag team match now with Paul Romeo Roma. I've never heard of Power and Glory, to be fair, before. Not a team that I was familiar with, and I know Hercules, obviously, having done these WrestleMania podcasts with yourself, Nick. But yeah, this team I hadn't heard of before. Maybe there's a reason for that. I guess we'll see if there are any other WrestleManias going forward. But yeah, just a very dominant display for Legion of Doom, building them up, making them look strong, and I guess mission accomplished. I gave it a 2 out of 10.
Yep, pretty much the same here. I gave it a 2.5 out of 10. Obviously establishing the Legion of Doom, and yeah, felt a bit bad for Hercules. I felt like he's always kind of I feel like he's always kind of looked the part, like he could do, go on to do some big things. But most of his WrestleMania matches are pretty forgetful. And Paul Roma, as you kind of mentioned, was a bit spooked by taking that move that you are referring to, and apparently that was a thing because a lot of people were uncomfortable taking that Doomsday device. So very much as scary as it looks, but yeah, clearly building up Legion of Doom to go on to do big things. Getting into the next match, we have Virgil, who is now, sticking up for himself, if you will. He's not a manager or just a side piece here. He is joined kind of by Roddy Piper with a crutch, who apparently, just had a motorcycle accident. He's going up against $1 million man. This one was a bit all over the place as well. KP, can you bring anything positive to this one?
Well, it was better than the previous match, I guess. That's a positive, right? Um, yeah, I mean, matches with Piper tend to be quite entertaining. Obviously, he's on the outside for this one, so not an in-ring performer. But yeah, this is my first time seeing Virgil competing in a match. I'd known him as a manager, very prominent in that role, alongside Ted DiBiase. But yeah, never actually in the ring I've seen before. So it's my first exposure to him, and definitely a unique style. I'm not familiar with him as a wrestler. So when he started to, adopt like a boxing stance and, very light on his toes, very quick foot, very quick feet around the ring, series of jabs and quick punches. I was thinking, oh, okay, fair enough. We're gonna have like a boxer versus wrestler dynamic for this one. This could be quite unique, quite interesting. Yeah, I guess really after that, it just sort of, I don't know, just really petered out, and I lost a lot of interest as it went on, sort of thing. Roddy, who's on the outside, he's got a crutch, so obviously he's not in a physical condition to do too much. He gets a good amount of support for Virgil throughout the matchup, but then eventually he gets shoved to the floor by Ted DiBiase, and if you shove someone down with a crutch, naturally, you're gonna get a bad reception from the crowd, and that's exactly what they gave him. They were booing like crazy for it. Piper eventually gets back up to his feet. Massive struggle to do so. He uses his crutch against the ropes, which sort of like sends Ted DiBiase crashing to ringside. It's quite a funny moment, I suppose. And then Ted hits Piper. Then I guess again, and gets counted out. So it's a win for Virgil via count out decision. So it just felt like a really, I don't know, like a cop out move, maybe a little bit more to get the attention on Piper and Ted DiBiase, maybe just take it a little bit away from Virgil there, perhaps. But yeah, I don't know. It just was a little bit odd. Virgil celebrating in the ring. He's happy with his count-out win. Ted takes him out, takes out frustration on him, taking him down. That's until Piper gets into the ring and, hits Ted DiBiase with the crutch. He then gets beat down by both Ted DiBiase and Sensational Sherri, who's seemingly been brought back in by Ted. Yeah, obviously we saw Sensational Sherri with Macho Man Randy Savage earlier, and now she's back in, a different situation here. So yeah, maybe you're right, and basically it wasn't sort of like her career was on the line thing, but maybe like her meal ticket is now Ted DiBiase rather than Macho Man Randy Savage, perhaps. But yeah, Virgil does get back up eventually, trying to help out Roddy Piper, but Ted DiBiase, Sensational Sherri, they quickly scurry out the ring and they completely just hightail out of there. So yeah, and I think that's basically everything covered for this one. It was okay, it was all right, it wasn't anything special, and had a bit of a unique dynamic that sort of like just disappeared very, very quickly once Ted DiBiase managed to dominate the rest of the matchup, really. So yeah, I gave it a 4 out of 10. Like I say, I don't have anything really too great to say about it, except that it was kind of captivating at first, and it was a little better than the previous match.
Yeah, but in the previous match, I think it's fair. I do wonder if Virgil was kind of a backup plan. I don't know if Roddy's injury was legitimate or not. I'm assuming not, but maybe the original plan was to have Roddy and Ted. That would have made more sense, I think. But when Roddy is the most entertaining part of this match, and he is someone at ringside, I think that's kind of a testament to the match and kind of what took place. Ted DiBiase's style here is just super slow, and I think it's just supposed to be that typical heel kind of runaway bit. But for whatever reason, it just gets on my nerves during this match. And it just feels like this one drags on forever. And that one's further kind of, capitalized in the fact that it ends up being a count out. So it's like, what was the point of the whole match then? So this one's just not for me. It was missing something. I think they were probably trying to cover up the fact that Virgil wasn't the best in-ring talent. So I think all the diversions and, running aways and all of that, I think was probably just to make this feel like it was a better match than it was. But for me, I just kind of felt like it did the opposite. So I did give this one a 3.5 out of 10. Ted kind of getting the final laugh there with sensational Sherri, who swiftly moved on. Probably got bought as soon as she, her services probably got purchased as soon as she went to the back after the Savage loss. So yeah, swiftly moved on. But yeah, this one just kind of all over the place. And 3.5 out of 10 kind of feels generous. Just really didn't. I really wanted a good match at this point because we were up. We were up so high, and then we have dipped quite low. Unfortunately, that does not change with the next match. We have the Mountie with once again Jimmy Hart going up against one of our favorites in Tito Santana. Yeah, Jimmy Hart playing dividends yet again. KP, what can you tell us about this one?
You spoke about, being on the high after Macho Man and going down, lower and lower and lower, it seems. Well, for me personally, I don't know about yourself, but this was literally hitting rock bottom for for me throughout the night. This was the worst match of the card in my perspective. I don't know what exactly the play was here, but yeah, the Mountie and Tito Santana, who, we've seen a fair bit of Tito. He's been pretty consistent over WrestleMania. He tends to have a good match in him, and they have him lose in very quick fashion, albeit heelish. It wasn't clean by any means necessary. But yeah, in a heel manner, they have him lose to the Mountie, and it basically comes along with Jim Hart. He hands Mountie a castle prod, and the referee's distracted on the other side of the ring, so that allows Mountie to actually use the cattle prod. Strikes Tito's midsection, and would remove the prod afterwards and go for the cover and get the victory. It was probably maybe a 2-minute matchup if that. Blink and you miss it scenario for sure, and don't really think it did either any favors personally, but I guess not knowing the build on what actually led to this matchup and what happens afterwards, it's hard for me to really have an in-depth say on that decision. But yeah, 1.5 I gave this. What more can I really give it? It was just too quick and didn't have anything really to say about it. So yeah, I don't know. This is rock bottom for me. Is it the same for you?
I do believe it is the lowest rated match of the night. The Mountie just feels like one of those terrible gimmicks. Like, no way this is going to work. No way this guy is going to win. This is clearly here to build Tito back up. He's gonna win this match swiftly, and he's going to move on to bigger and better things. You're talking about a former tag team champion, a former IC champion in that of Tito. But it's quite the opposite. He gets a cow throttle from Jimmy the Heart. And that's how he wins the match. Jimmy, once again, 3 in a row, helping his talent win. Annoying, felt extra annoying this year, Jimmy Hart. That was my main takeaway here. And somehow Tito Santana has come to losing to a gimmick called the Mountie. So not his finest moment, I'm sure. I gave this one a 2 out of 10. Let's move on to the main event, though. Hulk Hogan going up against Sergeant Slaughter, defending his WWE Championship with General Adnan. Considering the theme of the event, the Stars and Stripes, America versus Iraq here. A topical conversation. KP, what did you make of the match?
I mean, you ignore the height difference, I suppose. It's your classic face versus heel. I think it's literally face heel 101 in wrestling, really, this one. It had a very simple dynamic to it. Sergeant Slaughter, he's in control for most of the contest here, dominated for the majority of it. We saw some mission moves, we saw, holds being applied, we saw some just pure dominance from Slaughter. And it was a really progressive, dismantling of Hogan in the early stages and towards the mid to late as well. It gets to a point where, General Adnan, he's on the at the outside. He's interfering multiple times throughout. He's being a menace throughout this one. Obviously gets under Hogan's skin. Hogan eventually gets busted open, and that sort of sparks a fight back from the Hulkster. He does his classic hulking up after Sergeant Slaughter had literally dominated for a large part leading up to this point. And you know how it is with a Hulk Hogan match. He gets into his hulking up, and the match is ending in about a minute later, maybe a minute and a half if he's taking a little bit more of his time with what he's doing. He goes through his motions, he does his little comeback sequence, he hits his leg drop, and he wins back the WWF Championship after defeating Sergeant Slaughter. So, it's a very run-of-the-mill match. There isn't really anything too special about this one. It's, like I said, the heel putting in the work, just being a dominant force, making the crowd dislike him, as much as he physically can, and then you get the heroes come back at the end who fight through all the punishment and, goes through exactly everything that he needs to do and quickly picks up the win after overcoming, such an obstacle, such a Slaughter. It's Wrestling 101. This is out of the playbook, isn't it? It's not your most creative of matches, let's put it that way. And besides the General Adnan interference here, and I guess the busting open of Hogan, it would literally be probably one of the most basic matches of all time. I gave it a 5.5 out of 10. As a main event, it was pretty poor, to be honest. It was okay, it was fine. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't really rate it too much, to be honest with you. How did you think this one went down? Obviously, it was a little bit more than just this wrestling match, but I'm personally not going to get into that side of things. Obviously, you can, fire away if you want to.
Yeah, definitely not something we want to do on this channel, but it has to be said because that was the change of venue was one of the issues. Obviously, very low ticket sales. They originally had $100,000 people venue booked for this place, and then ended up going back to this Los Angeles sports arena, which I think seated around 20,000. The actual attendance ended up being, I think, around 16, because this Iraq versus U.S. During the actual Gulf War at the time. Which had America and Iraq, actually at war. So this is classic Vince, though, right? If he sees an opportunity to make money, albeit controversial or not, he's going to take advantage, and they very much did that with Hulk Hogan tearing the flag of the country you're at war with in real life, people are risking their lives for. It is a bold strategy. I think we can just leave it at that. And then even Hulk taking his own American flag and wiping his blood off with it at the end. Some interesting decisions here. But for the match itself, yes, very paint by numbers. You couldn't come up with a more basic plan. Good guy versus heel. This has always been the way of wrestling, back to its basic form. And it really didn't do anything new or different. It was, the ending was never in doubt. Hulk's not going to lose a second WrestleMania match, especially to the likes of Sergeant Slaughter, who are the bad guys at the time. We're definitely not losing that match. So it just felt like the writing was all over. There was never a doubt in the outcome. I would say maybe even more so somehow, right up there with the Undertaker. We knew he wasn't going to lose, and that definitely, I think, took a part in this match and basically what felt like a very promising WrestleMania. Yet again, Hulk Hogan main eventing, and I'm curious. We'll have to see if Hulk Hogan, he has to be up there in the most record of WrestleMania main events. But this one was definitely towards the bottom of his list so far, which wasn't all that impressive up to this point anyways. I did give it a 6 out of 10, which feels high after the berating I'm doing. But it was very basic, but it did work. The crowd obviously were into it. So for whatever that's worth. This like I said, this one had promise, but this definitely fell off hard. KP, give us your overall for the event and obviously the highlights of the night, which probably won't include that main event. But anything else you have to say about WrestleMania 7, and we will get this one wrapped up.
Yeah, it's a weird vibe. I started watching it, and as it was going along the first few matches up until Macho Man and Ultimate Warrior, I was thinking, you know what, this WrestleMania could be pretty good. This could be, the best one so far that we've been watching. And it's just a weird one. It completely fell off afterwards. You're talking every match after Macho Man and Ultimate Warrior was just bang average at best. I think the best I gave it afterwards was a 5.5, and that was the main event. So it's crazy. Literally, it's just a tale of two halves. And I'm not entirely sure what the decision was to put the better matches at the beginning and then in the middle, and then just to have a second half that was just absolute throwaway. It was kind of crazy. So yeah, I mean, we've spoken about putting people on the card to showcase them. Is obviously a very good call, but if you can't give them a good match, then are you doing them more harm than you are good? I think that's probably a case here. I mean, there are a few names on this card that I don't think really had anything going for them, following the end of this. So yeah, I don't know. It started off promising. It ended really, really poorly with just a lot of drab filler matches. And yeah, I think just the biggest takeaway is that it was just a massive throwaway for the most part. I gave it a 4.5 out of 10, and that is an overall of my ratings put together as an average. So that is the lowest so far. Just as a perspective, I was thinking this could be the best. Funnily enough, it turned out to technically, in my ratings, to be the worst so far, which is just insane. But it had an unbelievable match in Macho Man and Ultimate Warrior. Like, I've spoken about that a lot in the segment earlier, and it really was just it was cinematic. It was fantastic. So yeah. Also shout outs to Rockers, Haku, Barbarian for a really fun tag team match to kick off the show, and then Nasty Boys and the Hart Foundation as well for being my other two matches that were just really, really entertaining and a good watch as well. So yeah, unfortunate. What about you, Nick? Let's hear what you got to say.
Yeah, very much ties into the running, theme for these WrestleManias up to 7. In that, you have your few really good matches, but even the middle tier matches were better at the beginning than they were in the previous ones. As you mentioned, felt like we were going to be up to have our best WrestleMania so far, but then that hard drop off. So my average out to 5.3, which is about on par with most of them so far. But considering where we left off, to have it drop so dramatically definitely kind of shows how high it was towards the beginning of the show. Yeah, unfortunately. So I think for me personally, I walk away with, as I kind of mentioned, turning of the page here, debut of The Undertaker, Ultimate Warrior's retirement win over Savage, obviously being the highlight of the night, a controversial at best story for the overall event and the main event. Definitely is a topical one. Yeah, the last appearance of Jannetty and Neidhart and Andre the Giant. Yeah, very much feels like we're kind of moving on, and out with the old and with the new, if you will. Very much feels like the theme for this match. So maybe that's kind of why we got some of these results we did. Maybe people were out the door after this, and so the performances maybe lacked thereof, or maybe Vince was holding some booking decisions against people that are on their way out. Who knows? It's hard to tell. We pick up these fun bits that we can, but for the most part, we don't know a lot of what was going on at the time. So with that, this has been our WrestleMania 7 review. We will quickly and swiftly move on to WrestleMania 8. We'll be watching that tonight and recording tomorrow. So get this one, for the most part, get this bad taste out of our mouth and move on. Hopefully 8, it is a little better than 7, but we'll be back shortly and we will find that out if that is the case. With that, this has been the latest episode of our WrestleMania series, and this has been the latest episode of The Push with Nick and KP. If you like what we're putting out here, please let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Take care.